Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on another session of We Connect Academy Learning from Women Leaders Around the World series. My name is Andrea, and today I'm very happy to introduce Deidra Helmig. She is a Canadian registered safety professional who specializes in working with organizations to improve their psychological and occupational health and safety programs. She has been a helper, a caretaker, and a change maker all of her life. She knows that we all have the ability to thrive, and more importantly, we all deserve to thrive. Deidra's passions include watching people flourish, seeing them discover their talents, and exploring their own definitions of success. Deidra started her career as a botanist before moving into the field of herbalism. After taking time off to raise her daughter, she stumbled into the world of occupational health and safety, working with small to medium-sized businesses to develop and implement safety programs that truly change the culture of their organizations. This led her to psychological health and safety, and it is in this field that she feels truly at home, helping organizations of all sizes and within all industries help their workers thrive. I'll let Deidra introduce herself in a little bit, but I would like to remind all the attendees that you are muted, and if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat or Q&A boxes, and I'll read them out loud at the end of the session. Remember that this is a one-chance opportunity to learn as much as possible, so we encourage you to do as many questions as possible. A recording will be available on our YouTube channel next week. Thank you, Deidra, for being here with us today. How are you?
I'm really well. Can you hear me okay, Andrea?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Today, we are going to talk about psychological health and safety. I feel that it's something that is so important, no matter the size of your organization, what industry you're in, where in the world you're located. As Andrea mentioned, my name is Deidra Helmig. I'm located in Canada. I'm the CEO and founder of two organizations, Boreal Services Group, which, as Andrea mentioned, offers occupational health and safety consulting to local businesses in Alberta, Canada, and Trebus International, which we have just recently formed. Trebus is where we offer our psychological health and safety services, which is launching online globally in 2019. So we're really excited, and I'm really excited to be offering this webinar to my WeConnect colleagues. So our objectives today with this webinar are to discuss what psychological health and safety is, to talk about why it matters. We'll look at some aspects of psychological health and safety, and I say some aspects because I'm recognizing with only an hour, we'll be touching very briefly on only some of the aspects. We'll be taking a look at a case study, and I'll also be talking about some simple ways that you can incorporate psychological health and safety into your organizations immediately. So I'll give you some takeaway tips. I'll be providing you with some resources, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&As, as Andrea mentioned, with our last 10 to 15 minutes together. All right, so what is psychological health and safety? A psychologically healthy and safe workplace is a workplace that promotes workers' mental well-being and actively works to prevent harm to workers' psychological health, including in negligent, reckless, or intentional ways. Now, as you probably know, psychological health is often called mental health. So, psychological health and safety is often described as mental health in the workplace. A common definition of mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. Now, I often use these two phrases interchangeably, psychological health and safety and mental health in the workplace. So you'll hear me use both of those. However, I do have some colleagues who prefer not to use the term mental health at work, as they feel that too often when people hear mental health, they understand it to just mean mental illness, when that's not the case. Of course, there's positive mental health, there's good mental health. And some people, when they hear mental health, they just hear mental illness, and it might mistakenly narrow the focus of the conversation. But when I say that, that's not what I mean. But regardless of the terminology, psychological health and safety is embedded in the way people interact with one another at work on a daily basis and is part of the way working conditions and management practices are structured. It's the way decisions are made and communicated. So why does it matter? Why does good mental health matter in your workplace? Workplaces with a positive approach to psychological health and safety are better able to retain good talent, have improved employee engagement, enhanced productivity, they're more creative and innovative, they have higher profit levels, and they have a reduction of several key workplace issues, including the risk of conflict, grievances, turnover, disability, injury rates, absenteeism, and performance or morale problems. So as you can see, it's pretty important to put some time, energy, and resources into your psychological health and safety program. So we're going to dive a little deeper into 3 key reasons for ensuring that your employees have positive mental health experiences in the workplace, starting with the ethical case. Because simply, it's just the right thing to do. Personal and social codes of behavior and ethics are the foundation of every major religious and moral philosophy in the world. One of the most basic of universally accepted ethical principles is to do no harm to others. In the workplace, this means ensuring employees' health and safety, both physically and psychologically. Long before national labor and health regulations came into being, entrepreneurs learned that it was important to adhere to certain social and ethical codes related to workers as part of their role as community leaders, but also to ensure the success of their endeavors. These days, both global declarations and voluntary organizations have emphasized the importance of ethical business practices involving workers. In 2008, the Seoul Declaration on Safety and Health at Work, coordinated by the International Labor Organization, amongst other organizations, asserts that a safe and healthy work environment is a fundamental human right. As well, psychologically safe and healthy workplaces help organizations meet 5 of the 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Now, let's take a look at the legal case. This gets quite a bit more complicated, especially as current legal precedents are changing so quickly. What was fine maybe 5 years ago is currently no longer legal, so this is really changing. The provision and maintenance of a psychologically safe workplace has been recognized as a legal duty in many jurisdictions, similar to the duty to provide a physically safe workplace. In both realms, the employer must take every reasonable precaution to protect employee safety and show that they have done so. So they have to prove their due diligence. Providing a psychologically safe workplace can be more complex than providing a physically safe workplace, however. Some of the mental distress observed in the workplace is brought into the place of employment by the employee. Well, some of it is created at least aggravated in the course of the work experience. The concept of mental distress must be distinguished from the concept of mental illness. For example, a person may experience harassment and suffer mental distress as a consequence, but may not be diagnosable as mentally ill. Another concept is that of mental injury. The defining aspect of mental injury is that some person or persons are responsible for it in whole or in part. Mental injury involves harm to a person that results from someone else's negligent, reckless, or intentional conduct. When that conduct occurs in the workplace, the employer may face some liability for it, either directly or by association. So employers have different kinds of responsibilities with regard to mental distress, mental injury, and mental illness. Some of these responsibilities are moral, some are legal, and some are less clear. And, of course, laws change country to country, even region to region within a country, such as here in Canada. Every province and territory has its own legislation, so it makes it very complicated, and it's certainly something that you need to research for your own location. Now let's look at the business case. Now I know it seems somewhat cynical to look at mental health in terms of dollars and cents, but this is where the argument for a psychological health and safety program in the workplace just can't be lost. And this part really excites me, actually. So let's first look at the negative financial impacts. Because compromised worker mental health has a range of negative effects on organizations. Starting with absenteeism and disability. Mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety are rapidly becoming the main cause of disability in developed countries. Employers are facing increased disability premiums, rising health and benefit costs, and expenses associated with replacing absent employees. So I want us to take a look at a quick example from the UK. And I want to point out that this isn't just happening in the UK. Most developed countries have very similar statistics when it comes to mental health in the workplace. But these numbers are, this example just gave pretty clear numbers that I wanted to give you. So in 2015, in the UK, 127 million work hours were lost due to mental health related absence, which is the equivalent of around 75,000 individuals losing the entire year of work. Stress, and in that same year, stress, depression, and anxiety together ranked as the largest reason for absence in the UK in the workplace. And currently, poor mental health is now estimated to cost the UK 4.5% of their GDP. So a huge reason to think about the importance of, look at the negative impacts of mental health in the workplace. Also looking at reduced productivity. So I'm sure you've all heard of absenteeism. There's a fairly new term out there called presenteeism. And presenteeism is a decrease in performance, or simply put, a lack of productivity due to illness or injury while an employee is still at work. And psychological ill health, presenting typically as stress, depression, or anxiety in the workplace, is a significant contributor to presenteeism. And a recent study found that compared to a variety of other common disorders, such as asthma, migraines, or arthritis, depression caused the greatest decline in work productivity and focus. And numerous studies are showing that employees are more creative and are able to achieve higher levels of job performance when they are in mentally healthy work environments. So reduced productivity is costing employers a bundle these days. And like I said, a big part of that is due to negative mental health. Another contributor to this is also a decline in physical safety and an increase in accidents, incidents, and injuries. And this leads to an increase in disability costs and possibility of legal costs. And this all ties back to psychological health and safety as well. Another negative impact is a decrease in workplace morale. Reduced psychological health and safety contributes to conflict and grievances. If one member of a team is struggling, the whole team is compromised. Physical illnesses or injuries tend to be visible to fellow employees, but mental health problems are often described as invisible. These problems aren't apparent or recognized by team members. Changes in a colleague's usual behavior or performance due to mental health problems may be perceived as intentional, resulting in misunderstanding, resentment, and tense relationships. And this, in turn, contributes to absenteeism and turnover. So now let's take a look at the positive impacts. A psychologically healthy and safe workforce has meaningful benefits for organizations, including improved recruitment and retention. In today's complex and ever-changing job market, current and potential employees have higher expectations for their jobs. They expect to be treated fairly, recognized appropriately, and provided with opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge and develop new skills. Employers who create and sustain a great place to work will attract and keep the best workers. This is especially important to consider as millennials and Gen Z workers are moving up the ranks. They have completely different expectations for the companies they work for, and we need to be prepared to meet their needs. Improved employee engagement is another positive impact. An engaged employee is someone fully involved in and enthusiastic about their work. When employees are engaged, they view their interests as aligned with those of the company. They are more willing to extend an extra or discretionary effort to assist clients, customers, and their colleagues. The net result is improved performance, productivity, and quality of goods and services. And the last positive impact I want to talk about is improved sustainability. Organizations, like individuals, must be resilient in order to respond to external demands, whether they are market challenges, mergers, or opportunities for growth. Businesses or work groups with psychologically healthy employees are best equipped not only to survive, but to thrive when facing challenges. So now let's touch on a few aspects of a workplace psychological health and safety program. I promised you 5, but there are really so many more. So I've actually squeezed in 7, which still doesn't cover all of them. And we're really just touching on each of these so briefly. Each of these could be a webinar totally on their own. And Trevis, we're actually currently building online courses on a few of these topics right now. And so it's kind of killing me that we're only just touching on each of these. But in 2019, 2020, you'll be able to access a lot more information about these from us. And so I do apologize for the brief touch on each of these. But if you want to discuss them further, I'm so happy to connect after the webinar. I'll be providing you with all of my contact information afterwards. So the first one we're going to talk about is giving your employees a voice at the table. So regardless of whether it's in the boardroom or on the factory floor, at a construction site, within a small business, your employees are on the front lines and have some brilliant ideas to share. So not only does it make sense to tap into their brains for their ideas, but giving them the opportunity to have a voice at the table, a voice that is truly respected and heard, makes good business sense. Employees that feel that they are heard, that feel that they are engaged and empowered to make a difference in their organization, they show more loyalty and commitment, they are proud of the work they do, they have a positive job outlook, and they are passionate about their work. This is the kind of employee you want to have. RESPCT, a little respect, just giving a little nod to the Queen of Soul there. Giving respect is based on the showing of esteem, dignity, and care for another person's self-regard. Conversely, experiencing a lack of respect from others can undermine a person's very existence. Every employee should feel that his or her dignity is recognized and respected. This is especially important for lower level workers, And workers from all backgrounds must be treated fairly in the workplace. All workers should expect to be treated with civility and respect by not only their superiors and coworkers, but also by customers and clients, service providers and suppliers, and anyone else they might come into contact with in the course of their workday. And their employers need to have systems in place for conflict resolution and to be able to back them up when in a place of disrespect. Widening the tightrope. This is all about work-life balance and work-life integration and work-life segregation and sandwich generation. You guys have heard all of these buzzwords, I'm sure, about managing stress around our busy lives these days, and of course for good reason. The biggest causes of poor mental health in today's world is stress, and much of that is caused by the unsustainable lifestyles that many of us are living. If I can get personal for just a moment, I know that I feel like a complete hypocrite at times, such as when I was preparing for this webinar while I was on vacation with my family earlier this month. And I am working so hard to try to simplify my own life, especially as I'm writing and researching and trying to share how important mental health in the workplace is. But I believe that as an entrepreneur, I also have the luxury to get to choose when and how and where I work. And I love having that flexibility to have a fairly nomadic office. As long as I have my laptop and my phone, I'm usually good to go. And I also know that I'm very, very privileged that way. The vast majority of the world's workers aren't as lucky, including my own team often. But allowing for as much flexibility as possible takes a great deal of stress off of workers, especially when they are trying to manage other stressors in their lives, such as children or unwell or aging family members or other personal life emergencies, or even if they're not emergencies, maybe they just need to take their car into the shop, or maybe they need to meet their plumber at their house, or something as simple as that. Taking a little bit of that stress off makes life so much more balanced. And while we would all love it if there was a clear boundary between our personal lives and our work lives, we all know that's just not the case. We all have stress in our personal lives and it sneaks into our work lives. And we all have stress in our work lives and it sneaks into our personal lives. And we all have different roles we play in our lives, right? As workers or business owners, as parents or other family members, as, say, members of a sports team or a volunteer for an organization, or a member of a book club or some other community organization. And these varying roles should bring fulfillment and enrichment to our lives. But too often, these conflicting responsibilities can lead to overload if there is an imbalance in expectations. So at the very least, an organization should encourage workers to just work their scheduled hours, to take their entitled breaks. And this means not eating lunch at desks, which, again, I'm a total hypocrite for saying this, and getting away from the office on time and not answering emails over the weekend, etc. Workers should be able to reasonably meet the demands of a personal life and a work life, and still have energy at the end of the day to have an enjoyable personal life. And from what I've heard, North Americans are really bad at this, and other parts of the world are a lot better. But tell me if I'm wrong in saying that. As well, however, workers should be able to approach their supervisors when they're having trouble maintaining that harmony between their life and work. That's really, really important. The next one that I want to talk about is workload management and control. There is nothing worse than feeling like you have no control over something, correct? When you have no say in what you do or how you do it. Involvement and influence is present in a work environment where workers are included in discussions about how their work is done and how important decisions are made. You don't necessarily need to have your workers making the decisions, but they need to be aware of how those decisions are made and why those decisions have been made. Workload management is present where assigned tasks and responsibilities can be accomplished successfully within the time available. This is the risk factors that many workers describe as being the biggest workplace stressor. In other words, having too much to do and not enough time to do it. Further to this, it has been demonstrated that it is not just the amount of work that makes a difference, but also the extent to which workers have the resources, such as the time and the equipment and support to do the work well. It is important that workers are able to talk to their immediate supervisors about how their work is done, and that workers have some sort of control over how they organize their work, and that worker opinions and suggestions are at least considered with respect to the work, and that the organization encourages input from all workers on important decisions related to their work. This is going back to what we've already discussed about giving workers a voice. And that workers are informed of important changes that can input how their work is done. You can see that all of these previous items are about having good communication with your workers. Also important is that the amount of work workers are expected to do is reasonable. That workers have the equipment, as I mentioned, and resources needed to do their jobs well, and that it's in safe working order. And that workers' work is free from unnecessary interruptions and disruptions, and that workers have an appropriate level of control over prioritizing tasks and responsibilities when facing multiple demands. This is about giving your workers a level of control or autonomy about how they do their work. Now we're going to talk about psychological protection and safety. You might remember when we were talking about the definition of psychological health and safety that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. I said it's in a workplace that promotes a worker's psychological well-being and actively works to prevent harm to workers' psychological health, including in negligent, reckless, or intentional ways. So let me repeat that last part. Prevent harm to worker psychological health, including in negligent, reckless, or intentional ways. So this is the aspect of psychological health and safety that talks about harm. So we're going to talk about discrimination, harassment, and violence. But of course, bullying, rudeness, and stigmas also cause harm to psychological health, but we're not going to touch on those today. So here in Canada, the definition of workplace discrimination is what happens when an employee or a job applicant is treated unfairly because of their race, ethnicity, skin color, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, mental or physical disability, religion, pregnancy or parenthood, or age. And here in Canada and in many other countries, workplace discrimination is illegal. Now that I said that's the definition here in Canada, I don't think it is a whole lot different in any other country, but I just wanted to say that that's the definition here. Now, workplace harassment. We've heard so much about workplace harassment lately, haven't we? Particularly with sexual harassment in terms of the Me Too and the Time's Up movement. And it's not just in the entertainment industry, and it's not just women that are speaking up, but people are no longer tolerating feeling psychologically unsafe in their workplace any longer. It's a very inspiring time. I know we have a long, long way to go, and not everyone has the option to speak up or to change jobs, but it's a pretty exciting time. So let's talk about what workplace harassment is, and just as important, we'll talk a little bit about what it isn't. But workplace harassment is behavior intended to intimidate, offend, degrade, or humiliate a particular person or group in the workplace. So harassing behavior can include unwelcome conduct, comments, gestures, or contact, which causes offense or humiliation. So examples include name calling, harassing phone calls, spreading rumors. This harassing behavior also includes deliberate misgendering, so referring to a person using terms or pronouns that do not align with that person's affirmed gender. Physical or psychological bullying, which creates fear or mistrust, or which ridicules or devalues the individual. Can include exclusion or isolation of individuals. Can include intimidation, so standing too close or making inappropriate gestures or comments. It can include cyberbullying, so posting or sending offensive or intimidating messages through social media or email. Deliberately setting the individual up to fail, so making unreasonable demands, setting impossible deadlines, or interfering with work. Intentionally withholding information or giving the wrong information, or taking away work or responsibility without cause is considered workplace harassment. And also displaying or circulating offensive pictures or materials in work or electronic form. Workplace harassment is not reasonable action taken by the employer or supervisor relating to the management and direction of workers. So that's really important to define as well. Now, violence in the workplace can include the obvious ones, physical attack or aggression, such as hitting, shoving, pushing, kicking, throwing an object at a worker, kicking an object the worker is standing on, like a ladder. It can include threatening behavior, so shaking a fist in a worker's face, wielding a weapon, trying to hit a worker. It can include verbal or written threats. It can include domestic violence, which becomes a workplace hazard and is no longer limited to just a personal issue when it occurs or spills over into the workplace, and it may put either the targeted worker at risk, or it may pose a threat to coworkers. And I've been working with an organization here in the city that I live in helping organizations develop workplace, domestic violence in the workplace programs for businesses. And then sexual violence is also a workplace issue when any sexual act or attempt to obtain a sexual act by any person, regardless of their relationship to the victim, takes place in a workplace or work-related setting. So it could be, say, at an office party or at a conference, for example. So that's psychological protection and safety. So the next one we're going to talk about is protection of physical safety. And as I mentioned before, occupational health and safety, so physical health and safety, is what my other organization, Boreal Services Group, focuses on. And so I've seen over the last, what has it been, 8-9 years that I've been working in occupational health and safety, I've seen how different companies have very, very different views on safety and how that affects the psychological health and safety of their workers. And it also ultimately affects the success or lack of success of those companies. And I've had workers from companies that felt their physical health and safety was not a priority come to me full of anxiety, both about getting injured or even killed on the job, but also about speaking up or refusing unsafe work. So organizations need to understand that the physical work environment impacts mental health. Workers feel safe, so not concerned or anxious about the physical work environment, are able to focus on their work and able to be more productive. All health and safety concerns must be taken seriously, and workers asked to do work that they believe is unsafe should have no hesitation in refusing to do it. Workers must be given sufficient training to perform their work safely, and the organization should always assess both the psychological and physical demands of the job and the environment to determine if it presents a hazard to workers' health and safety. And the last aspect that we're going to look at, even though, like I said, there are more, the last one we're going to look at in this webinar is growth and development. So everyone is a lifelong learner, whether they do it formally and choose to register in programs or do professional development or choose to do their master's or their PhD at 50 years old or whatever, or whether they just constantly learn through life experiences. Everyone is a lifelong learner. Everybody is always growing and developing. So growth and development is present in a work environment where workers receive encouragement and support in the development of their interpersonal, emotional, and job skills. These workplaces provide a range of internal and external opportunities for workers to build their repertoire of competencies, which will not only help with their current jobs, but will also prepare them for possible future positions, ideally within the same organizations, but perhaps not. A good manager or supervisor provides workers with feedback that help them grow and develop. Supervisors are open to worker ideas for taking on new opportunities and challenges, and workers have opportunities to advance within their organization. The organization values workers' ongoing growth and development, including opportunities to develop their people skills at work. So it's not only job skills, but it's also those soft skills that we're talking about here. All right, so that's all the time we're going to spend looking at different aspects of psychological health and safety. So now we're going to move on to a case study. And in this case study, we're going to look at a retailer that I'm sure you're all familiar with, a little store called The Gap. So this was actually a study on productivity, not psychological health and safety. But as we've already discussed, psychological health and safety has a profound effect on productivity. So it's really easy to tie the two together. So this was a 28-store, 35-week study done in the US, not done by The Gap themselves, but by third-party researchers. So during the study, they intentionally provided employees with consistent work schedules. And this is a practice that is not common at The Gap or with many retailers. And over the course of the study, this included eliminating store managers' ability to cancel a shift on an employee up to 2 hours before the shift started. And when I read that that was a common practice, that just about made my head explode. I couldn't believe that that was a common practice. Requiring employee schedules to be posted 2 weeks in advance and keeping consistent schedules in general. Guaranteeing a core group of employees 20 hours a week. Setting consistent start and end times for shifts, and increasing staffing during surge times. So what were the results? The Gap stores that embraced the concept of consistency in scheduling saw an astounding 7% increase in store revenue. So the cost to implement these scheduling changes cost the stores $30,000 in labor hours and yielded almost $3 million in incremental sales. So not only that, but they also saw decreases in theft. They found that managers spent much less time on scheduling. In one case, it reduced the time from 3 days to 4 hours, and improved stock organization, which meant fewer false out of stocks, in which employees mistakenly believe that they don't have a requested item in the midst of a disorganized stock room, which also led to increased sales. So what are the psychological health and safety results? First, consistency can have profound effects. Inconsistency in work patterns and in leaders confuses people, erodes trust, causes fear, and can lead to learned inertia, in which employees, who can be paralyzed by uncertainty, disengage from their jobs and avoid interactions with inconsistent managers. It's simple. People need patterns. Patterns produce certainty. Certainty allows employees to focus on productivity-boosting behaviors, such as, in this case, providing better service. Respecting the workers' needs for a consistent schedule helps to provide them with a work-life integration, some sort of balance where they can make plans for their personal life and have a more dependable paycheck. Of course, a Gap employee is going to appreciate that and become more invested in their job and a better worker. And secondly, autonomy is a contributing factor in workplace satisfaction. The Gap study gave store managers discretion to implement the proposed changes as they saw fit. Store managers were trusted by HQ, and HQ did not micromanage, and such discretion led to astonishingly better results. I thought that was an amazing case study. So what can you do today to incorporate psychological health and safety into your organization. I'm just going to talk about some simple tips that you can do today. First, be open. Understand that mental health is really no different from physical health when it comes to requiring understanding from employers and getting the support required. Communicate with your workers that if they need to take some time to manage their mental health, or if they want to talk to you about mental health issues that they need your assistance with in the workplace, that you're willing to listen and to support them. Also, know that you don't need to be a psychologist to support them. You don't need to be their therapist, and you don't ever want to offer them advice or certainly not a diagnosis. However, you might want to have some resources available, perhaps websites or phone numbers for your local mental health association, or if you have a benefits program that includes psychology or psychiatry services, make sure you share that information, always with tact and always with confidentiality, of course. In general, always treat your workers with respect and give them individual recognition. Point out when they've done a good job and recognize when they've gone the extra mile. Acknowledge your workers, treat them with dignity, listen to their ideas, and value their input. As I mentioned before, showing authentic respect to your workers costs you absolutely nothing, and your workers will repay you multiple times over. What is so important, however, is that you coach your frontline supervisors and managers to do all of the above, to recognize the signs of distress with their workers and to be able to offer the support that is required. Managers and supervisors who are working most directly with your workers need to understand the importance of positive mental health in the workplace and how important it is to the success of the business. A recent Canadian study showed that almost half, about 45% of employees would like to receive more support from senior management and human resources when it comes to mental health in the workplace. And 4 out of 5 managers believe it is part of their job to intervene with an employee who is showing signs of depression, but that only 1 in 3 report having had appropriate training to do so. So make sure that your managers and supervisors have both the support from you plus the training required. But I suppose you're saying, well, where do I get this training from? So that's definitely something that Trevis is working on. We aren't ready to launch anything like that right now because we're still just a baby company, but it's something that we definitely see as a priority. In the meantime, though, I've included some of my favorite free resources here if you want to take a look a little further. 2 of these resources are Canadian, and the third one that I've got here is from the World Health Organization. As mental health is such a huge topic these days, there really is a ton of resources available right now. So part of the challenge is sorting through the massive amounts of resources that are out there. So take a screenshot of this if you want and Google these, or get in touch with me and I can send you the links to these 3 resources. Or like Andrea said, this is going to be available on the YouTube channel, so you can just wait until next week and then you'll have access to this to have these titles and Google them then. But as I mentioned in Trevis, we're focusing 100% on psychological health and safety, and we'll have tons of resources up in the next year and courses and that sort of thing. So we're slowly getting our content out there. So wrapping up, thanks so much for listening. Please keep in touch. Here is my contact information, my email address and my LinkedIn, and also our website. If you have any questions, if you come up with any questions beyond the webinar today, please reach out. I would love to chat. If you would like me to send you the slides, I can do that as well. Or if you would just like to connect on LinkedIn or on Instagram, we're also on Instagram. So just through Trevis International, you can find us there. But I think, yeah, we have about 15 minutes, I guess, for questions. So Andrea, do we have any questions?
That's right. Thank you so much, Deidra. That was so interesting and so helpful, especially for, I believe, all the attendees who are in the process of building up their companies and just trying to make their employees happy and success in their job. I see that well, we have some comments saying thank you. I think that was very helpful to all the attendees. But please, people, all attendees, this is the moment when you can really take advantage of this amazing webinar by making questions. So write them down in the Q&A or chat boxes, and I will read them out loud. I cannot grant you access to the microphone, but you can definitely write them down, and I will read them out loud. I have one question for you, Deidra.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, as a business owner, you're always thinking, what kind of additional things I can provide my employees if not salaries, so that they are, happy and don't just go for, higher salary somewhere else. And I know that many companies, especially in the U.S., are going above and beyond to, create all sorts of, benefit packages and all that. What do you think is more valuable to, employees in terms of, like in a balance between salary and benefits, and as you were talking about, all these environment in which they work in, and all the things that you have, of the resource, the human resource management. What do you think they value the most?
Well, from a lot of both the research that I've been doing, and even just like both secondary research, a lot of the reading that I've been doing and that sort of thing, plus the primary research, just talking with a lot of people and doing some of our own studies, we're finding that sure, while salary and benefits and that sort of thing is important, you want to be able to make a good living and that sort of thing. It's no longer that. People are looking way beyond that. They would rather get paid a little less and have that work-life balance and have respect and have flexibility and have a really, really great life. People want to be respected. People want to be valued. People want to have the opportunities to grow and be an individual in their jobs and not just a cog in the corporation. They want to be innovative. They want to be creative. They want to be recognized for that innovation and for their creativity. I think that's why so many people are interested in the world of entrepreneurship, because and willing to take those financial risks and that sort of thing, because they're not interested in just bringing home a paycheck, but feeling kind of crummy for so much of their day and so much of their year, and getting their 3 weeks of vacation and that sort of thing. And especially the more that I'm reading about, like, I'm considered a Generation X, but I've been really reading a lot about millennials and Gen Z, or Gen Z if I'm talking to Americans, I guess, and reading that, people are looking for so much more than a good paycheck, and they're willing to give up those really good paychecks and those sweet benefits plans and that sort of thing to have a more fulfilling career and they're not even looking at, like, a career isn't necessarily what they're looking for. They're not necessarily looking for one career in their lives. They're looking to try multiple positions and multiple opportunities to be fulfilled in one way and then be fulfilled in another way, and they're willing to take those risks. So it's kind of a whole new world that we're looking at now. And so that's tough for companies that are trying to retain talent, that they need to, they're not going to retain them by just offering them a better salary, that they need to, some people call them, can say that these individuals that they're just a little bit, I don't know, that they're too flaky and that sort of stuff. But no, they just want to, they've got ideas, and you need to be able to offer them the opportunity to keep their creativity flowing and opportunities to be innovative and to be fulfilled in those ways.
Oh my God, I wish, I know that of so many industries where that is not, what they preach and what they believe in, and it's really refreshing to hear that it's more and more evident that the workplace has to change. There's so many industries that is just they just don't care. It's just about a large paycheck. That's it. But thank you so much. That's amazing. I don't have any questions, and I'm very surprised because we have a few, there's a number of attendees, but I guess everything was very clear. And now I want to remind all the attendees that if you have any follow-up questions, you can reach out to Deidra directly. She will be happy to answer any questions, any pending questions, and also if you're interested in probably connecting for other business opportunities, you can reach out directly. This recording will be available in our YouTube channel, so we invite you all to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you can also watch it again if something was not very clear or anything. We invite you to visit our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Deidra. Again, that was an amazing presentation. Congratulations for what you're doing. I think more industries need to incorporate this understanding of mental health and psychological health at work. So thank you so much. A lot of people are just saying thank you. I thank you so much for sharing this information. I run a transportation business in which the schedules change constantly due to customer needs. And I'm aware that this may cause, this can be very stressful for them. What would you suggest to lower the impact on their mental health?
Can you repeat that? I just missed the very beginning. Tell me again.
So she runs a transportation business.
Okay.
Schedules change constantly. It's more like customer driven. And yeah, she's aware that this might be stressful for the employees. What would you suggest to lower the impact on their mental health?
Gosh, yeah, schedule changes are like that's one thing that, I mean, in the Gap example, we just controlled those schedule changes, and that was how the mental health challenge was taken care of. But when that challenge, when the job depends on those schedule changes being like, that's what you're offering to the client. Let's see. That's it. I'm thinking that perhaps giving the drivers, the workers, I think for one thing, having that conversation with them, like giving them a bit of a voice to say to them how best, like when you've got a schedule and then it changes, how best in terms of us communicating it to you, in terms of, like, I'm assuming that they know when they get hired that this is what they're hired on to do. So if they had some sort of a voice in saying, I would find it easier if I was given, like, I don't know if they're given an hour's notice or half a day's notice, or what those changes entail exactly, or if it's a full day or what it is. But having that conversation with them so that they can at least be given the opportunity to say, hey, I would prefer it if I'm given at least this much time notice, or if you're going to change my schedule in a half a day's notice, say, then in return I get a full day off, or something like that, so that they've got an opportunity to say, this is how it can be made better for me. I think, again, that voice and them saying, this is how this is how it would be made better for me. This is how I can handle this better. That might be an opportunity for them to just feel like they have a little bit more control over their often changing work conditions.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions, I think we can finish the webinar. Thank you so much, Deidra, again, for this presentation and your time and your generosity to share all this knowledge with us. Again, remember that the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. And stay tuned for more webinars in our webinar calendar on our website. So thank you so much, Deidra. Thank you so much to all the attendees. We'll talk to you very soon in our next webinar.
Great, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.